This week's film I find especially interesting and highlights an article about automotive spying from late '59 written by Jack Vandenberg. Some notes and commentary are added for additional information and context. Please don't forget to subscribe for more films if you like these type of articles and dealer information film strips. I have over 100 dealer film strips ranging from the 1920s to the 2000s. It is not an AI article, but uses AI voicing. I hope you find it as interesting as I do.
Outside of government, there probably is no larger espionage setup in the world than there is in the auto industry, nor any that works more arduously at learning the secrets of the opposition. Right now, any auto company could tell you what its competitors have on the drawing boards for 1961. The car makers have already made advertising plans and adjustments in their own products to offset the innovations their competitors have for 1960, secrets which will not be revealed to the public until next month. The auto companies no longer are worried about their competitors finding out what they have planned for 1960. They are convinced everyone in the industry knows by this time. And even if their secrets get out, it's too late now for another company to match their innovations. Automakers generally require a production lead time of 3 years. A crash program can make a change in a proposed model in 18 months. But even at this late date, the automakers feel information reaching the public about their new cars can be harmful. If the public finds out too far in advance what we're planning for next year, people might stop buying this year's cars and wait for the new ones, one industry official said. And if the public knows what is coming but can't get it immediately, some of the newness of our cars is rubbed off before they're available. The actual introduction then becomes anticlimactic. But why don't automakers release their competitors' new models, hoping to diminish the newness of the upcoming vehicles? There is an implied gentleman's agreement against that, an industry-wide full-stop armistice on leaking another's manufacturer's designs. Why this agreement? Why this agreement? There are multiple reasons. First, the industry and public would realize these massive spy programs exist, exposing their dirty laundry that would harm their company's image, and all hell would break loose. Secondly, there is the threat of retaliation. The competitor could release the upcoming models and features they have spied. The auto magazine industry has a voracious appetite for new model information and would gladly publish any exclusive look at new models at the newsstand. Advertising be damned. Thirdly, what if you are actually increasing demand for your competitor? Especially if you don't have an immediate answer to the market demand for the next new feature coming out from a competitor. And lastly, you may be wrong. You may have been fed a false flag operation from a competitor. These false flag operations exist and are an active part of the counter-espionage programs going on. But some shots are fired from the trenches occasionally. At a press preview of the 1957 Fords, that company suddenly decided to show its retractable hardtop convertible to reporters. The very next day, Chevrolet announced its new fuel injection system. Ford had had the retractable in the works for years, and the industry knew fuel injection was in the experimental stages. But the hurried Ford decision to show the retractable apparently was based on some stray misinformation that Chevy was planning to reveal something really startling the day after the Ford reveals. Or it could have been simply based on a spur-of-the-moment decision to take the gloss off the fuel injection announcement by Chevrolet the next day. More proof of this is, you will see only the Sunliner convertible mentioned in the original 1957 Ford lineup brochure. The later revisions would add a Skyliner page to the original '57 brochure. Ford obviously was planning the Skyliner to be introduced in the '58 line, but rushed it into the '57 models. But the industry spies, many of them former FBI agents who have left the government for the higher pay of the auto industry, rarely miss. You concede that the competition is aware of your plans a year in advance, says C. Torrey Adams, an ex-FBI agent who directs Ford Styling Center security. Even when there are no mistakes, spying can sometimes work to the advantage of the company spied upon. About 9 months before the 1949 Pontiac was introduced, George Walker, currently Ford Vice President of Styling but then only a styling consultant to Ford, discovered the Pontiac featured a spinner arrangement in its grille. So did the Walker design for the 1949 Ford. Walker could have kept quiet about it and let Pontiac uncover the bad news for itself. Ford, introduced well ahead of Pontiac that year, could have established itself and scoffed at Pontiac for copying the Ford. But Walter boldly called GM's director of styling, told him he had seen pictures of the Pontiac, and tactfully suggested its grille be altered. Because it involved only a minor design issue, Pontiac still was able to act and did so, although with a great deal of work and money required being that close to production. Although all of the auto companies refuse to talk about their methods of learning their competitors' secrets, and GM even denies it uses spies, some of the leaks in the security are fairly obvious. Ford seemed to run the most egregious spy network of the big three, employing many spy photographers, which must be cleared out of the trees at GM and Chrysler test tracks on what seems like a daily basis. These spy ops become apparent when the companies talk about the steps they take to protect their secrets from others, a portion of their security program they are not quite as close-lipped about. We're trying constantly to reduce the number of exposures, the number of times the new models are seen by different people, Ford Security Chief Adams said. That way, you make information less clear, less accurate, and you slow down transmission. We obviously can't brainwash our employees, stylist Walker said. Once they leave the styling center, there's very little we can do to prevent them from talking freely about whatever they happen to have seen or be working on. Some of the greatest leaks, I'm afraid, come from the top, said one Big Three official. Some of the brass will gather, and one will accidentally let fly some secret of more than passing importance. For example, Lester Lum Tex Colbert of Chrysler sent his public relations staff into a dither earlier this year when he told a New York press conference some of the details of the small car his company planned to introduce. George Hubner, Jr., chief engineer in Chrysler's automotive gas turbine project, got trapped by his young son 5 years ago while testing a conventional 54 Plymouth outfitted with its top secret turbine setup. His son one evening talked him into a ride and wanted to invite a schoolmate. Hubner approved, and the schoolmate's father, who showed up with him, turned out to be an executive from a competing company. What could I do? Hubner asked. And of course, hiring another employee off a competitive firm is a great source of information, although firms swear they don't pump ex-employees for information. Virgil Exner was fully aware of this tactic and worked with security to try to ensure only specific loyal employees were allowed to see the final complete products, and most companies siloed design sections of the studios so information didn't get cross-shared between them. The grille designers didn't see the interior of the car. The interior designers didn't see the grills, etc., etc. Non-compete agreements existed and were legal in all but 3 states, but are difficult to enforce and could also lead to a career-ending exit. Who would hire and trust a traitor ever again? And unless the company was paying a retirement fund size payoff, it could spell a career-ending decision.
Here is a film clip of Bob Lutz buying the GM story. They simply peeked over the fence. Looking at the timeline, I don't think it holds up, because GM would ditch the 58 breadbox cars pretty quick after May of '56, when the 58 model was completed. The 58 one-year model ditch would be a huge expense and tick off every vendor, and would easily take a few months to get past the top brass and get prepared. So GM had to know about the Chrysler 57 line, probably late '55 or early '56. GM knew their brick design was beaten, so they promptly started on a new 59. Only a handful of brick 59 designs really showed up. The new 59 design would be completed a little late around June or July, and the 100% complete display-painted Model 59 Chevy car was done in October of '57. So GM wouldn't have had time if they found out in late '56. The top brass certainly wanted to know what Exner had planned, and you can bet on the fact they had the money and power to find out. Of course, you had to tell the press a story, and they came up with, "We looked over the fence." Chrysler may have known their cars were exposed and pressed on, but most everyone at the company were hoping to get another year of prepping for the 57 cars, as they knew it would impact quality due to the massive changes. The issues were so bad at Chrysler that engineering was working around the clock to get fixes in place, and Chrysler would have to occasionally stop production in the early 57 cars to address issues. An unheard practice, as stopping the line was simply not supposed to happen. But the public wanted the 57 forward-look cars, and they were buying them as fast as they could make them.
58, Chevrolet Bel Air. This is just a classic piece of American automotive history.
Yeah, it's an interesting Chevrolet because it was only produced for one model year. And later on, we're going to see a 57 Chrysler product where Chrysler just blew the rest of the industry away with very advanced styling and fins. And of course, GM had planned this car a couple of years earlier, and it came on the heels of the successful 55, 56, and 57, the all-time classic Chevrolet.
Sure.
And this was launched when Chrysler had these beautiful, sleek, fin-tailed shapes, and GM knew that they were in big trouble. And it didn't sell as well as they hoped. Meanwhile, it was planned for one model year only, and then it was superseded by the 59 Chevrolet with the fins sweeping out the side, which was GM playing catch-up. So this is a very rare car. It's the last of the somewhat rectangular GM cars, and it has a lot of presence. It's a very lovely car, but as I say, pretty rare because not that many with only one model year. There weren't that many of them around.
Well, that is sort of when you're in, as you have been, the executive suite at these auto companies. How do they know, as you mentioned, when they're in trouble? Is it straight up sales? Is there a buzz? Is there a vibe?
GM designers took a look behind the fences at Chrysler, and they saw the 57s. They took some sneak pictures, and they knew they were in trouble. So they went back and they scrapped most of the advanced projects and started over. But the 58 Chevy, was probably too late to stop, so out it came. Well, yeah, if they discovered it in 57 and it came out in 58, it was too late to change anything. But they reacted very fast because in 59 they had the new style, but quality wasn't a big issue back then, and basically nothing fit.
Well, let's meet the owner, Richard, who is over there with Eric Gorgeous. Eric, to you.
One pair of spies found themselves literally up a tree in such a case. These spies were caught and stopped at gunpoint when they were forced out of a tree when the chainsaw went to work below by the guards, and they tossed down their cameras and then were let go. To counteract the efforts of the spies, companies employ a security force of guards and elaborate systems for preventing unauthorized eyes from seeing company secrets. Guards, badges, and locks on everything not nailed down are utilized. Ford uses locked waste baskets that are taken out to be burned by two guards, so no tossed design drawings can be peeked at or smuggled out before destruction. Security is very tight when transporting or disposing of mock-ups and roadworthy test cars also. Only loyal internal teams are responsible for such tasks.
This goes back to interviews with automotive designers who objected to companies destroying their artwork and actively smuggled these sketches outside to avoid them being burnt up, using false bottoms and internal coat lining pockets.
The rule was, this is company property. They own it. They paid you for it. It belongs to them. It scared the heck out of us that we shouldn't steal all that stuff out. But then when I saw what happened to it when we got through with the program, they would empty the drawers and throw out the sketches.
We hated to see our sketches destroyed, go into the chopper, although literally hundreds and hundreds of mine did, and I know that's true of other designers too. Any living designer or any recently deceased designer will have tried to save a number of his sketches.
A lot of guys used to make false bottom on the boxes and put the sketches in when they moved stuff out of the studio.
Ford employs a 60 times power telescope in rooftop security outpost to keep watch over its design studios, and studios use windowless or one-way glass to keep out prying camera lenses. Perhaps the most brazen attempt at automotive espionage was made in the summer of 1948 by a Pontiac stylist who wanted to see what the 1949 Lincolns looked like firsthand. The Pontiac man and a cohort armed themselves with several rolls of blueprints and then marched boldly through the side door of the old Lincoln plant in Detroit, posing as employees. The attempt might have been successful, but one of the Lincoln manufacturing staff members was a former employee of the Pontiac stylist. The stylist and his former employee spotted each other at the same time. The former employee started to walk over to greet his old boss, but the intruder then made a run for it, and this turned into a wild chase scene throughout the plant. Keystone comedy or not, the auto espionage game is serious in the auto capital. In the smoky atmosphere of rumor and conjecture that descends on Detroit every September, the public appetite is honed. The manufacturers hope to a sharp edge. The surprises the car companies can pull out of their hats each model year can decree success or failure in a multi-billion-dollar industry.
Thanks for watching. A very interesting read you might want to check out that is similar to this article is a book written by famous car spy James Dunn. Although his photos are of the 70s and up, he has extensive stories of his car spying escapades.